Hello there. So today we have an Nintendo Switch here that supposedly a customer says that it doesn't charge. So we're just going to take a quick look at it. The best way to diagnose this issue is to have a USB amp meter, something like this. That way we can tell whether it's actually connected to the chip, whether it's communicating between the charger and the device. So the first thing I always do is look actually through the port. So we're going to go to microscope and just take a quick look to see if any of the pins are messed up. It's important to see if the pins are messed up because if you have any of those pins that are bent, missing, touching something else, you could damage something else on the board or in your charger. So just looking through here, I can tell that none of the pins are missing. There's no damage. It's not bent. It's not cracked. So should be pretty confident to just go ahead and plug this in. And plugging it in normally, this would display 5 volts, 15 volts, 9 volts, 20 volts, whatever the device is taking. So I can show you on my phone that as soon as I plug this in, 5 volts, 9 volts, and then it takes an amp. Going back to this one, plugging it in one way, I get nothing. Plugging it in the other way, I still get nothing. So this is a pretty common issue on these. This really helps with diagnosing the what the problem is and kind of knowing whether we should be looking at certain tips or looking at other things. So it helps just to narrow down the diagnostics. So let's just take this apart real quick, and then we'll take a quick closer look at the board. Okay, now that we have the whole thing disassembled, now we'll plug it back in just to check again, just to see if anything has changed. And as you can tell, nothing one way and nothing the other way. So one of the chips that I usually go to first when having this issue is going to be this M92T36 chip. This one is in charge of communicating between the device and the charger. Just kind of saying like, yeah, give me the voltage, charge me or something. So typically, if this chip goes bad due to power surge, due to lightning, anything like that, one of these caps around the edges will short out. So again, putting my multimeter in beep mode, I'm just going to go around and check all of these caps. So that one's a pretty common one. That one. If it's only beeping on one side, that's good. So one side, one side, one side. Okay, so this one is beeping on both sides. Now, some might say just pop the cap off and that should be it, but it's not the cap that's bringing it down to ground, it's actually the chip. So I'm going to pull the chip off really quick, and then we'll take a measurement again and see if anything has changed. The flux will help kind of like help the solder flow, and it'll just come off easier when I heat it up. Okay. So now that the chip's off, let's go around and check again. So one probe on ground, and this one was the one that was giving us an issue, and now it's not. So it's not always the cap. In this case, it was the chip. So let's just clean off that area, and then put a new chip on there. So this right here is regular factory unleaded solder. So just to change the alloy, we're going to add some leaded solder, which melts at a lower temperature, and that way it's easier to put the chip on without being scared that that it's going to melt anything else. And I'm just kind of letting most of it pool into the center, because the center, I don't really care about that one too much, because I'm just going to come right back to wick it off. I don't need to get all of it, just the majority of it. So we'll just clean off all this residual burned flux and grab a new chip to put it back. Now I don't really keep my things in like a folder like this, so I can flip through them and kind of see what it is that I'm looking for. So going to my game, like Nintendo game consoles, is PS4 chips. Just gonna go in here, grab this chip, close it up, and put it away. So this is the chip, the new chip, and just to remember, this is the orientation in which it goes in. So let's put some flux, heat it up, push it down, and then solder all the pins to it, and then we'll test again and see if it's made a difference. Alright, so it's normal to get these bubbles because it's most of the solder from the center that's getting squeezed out. So I'm going to add a little bit more flux, go around, touch all the pins around the outside. Make sure they look well, make sure they look correct, like it's actually soldered well, and then that should be it. Now it helps with a small iron tip like this, it helps to keep the board warm, so I'm trying to work as quickly as I can. You see how it's kind of sticking there, so I'm going to come back and touch these up with some help from my hot air station. I'll probably have to do the same here, yep. Now I normally keep my iron pretty low at 340. My 340 might not be the same as your 340, but that's where I keep mine. So I'm not going to use as hot air. This is a lower temperature, and just kind of go around touching all of them. And if you see that they're bridging kind of like this, I'll usually go ahead and add some flux until it's not doing that, like that. There you go. And notice how I'm like moving the flux around with the help of the air, like this. So I'm moving it where I need it. So right now I need it here, so I'm going to move it in that direction. Touch all the pins without touching anything else. You don't want to touch these two resistors or short out these caps. So then move that around and then touch up these and we're done. There you go. Now this hot air is not hot enough to melt it. If I was to melt the solder and then push it around with the iron, most likely the whole chip would move around. So it's not too hot to do that, but it's hot enough to keep the board warm. So now cleaning, and then we'll inspect each side just to make sure that it's soldered well, make sure that there's no bridges or anything like that. And then we'll go around and measure again with the multimeter. Okay, so we'll start here. Looks pretty good to me. These over here look pretty good. Those are shifted, but there's no bridges, so that's fine. And lastly, let's see if I can get this in focus. Yep, looks good to me. Okay. So going back with the multimeter, this is just to confirm that we fixed the initial issue. So we'll start here. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And so now we have nothing here. And then we'll check these. Okay. So now that like short is gone, so now we can go ahead and plug the charger back in and see if that makes a difference. So now I'll plug it in, and we still get nothing. So probably, look, you see? Alright, so now I get 15 volts here, but it's not changing. It's still 0 amps. It should pull a little bit, I think. Going back to this side, still nothing. Okay, so one side works, but the other side doesn't work. Let's plug in the battery on with this side working and see what change that makes. So plugging in the battery this way, we'll see 15, and then it's 0.01, 0.02, 0.01. Sometimes this can happen if the battery's very dead, a very low charge. So that seems okay to me. I'm not too concerned about that, but we're still not getting anything here. So sometimes, depending on, again, the initial thing that damages, I think that it was most likely some kind of lightning storm or some kind of storm like that, power surge. Go around the board. Actually, it could be this chip. Let me go around one more time just to make sure that it's nothing else is shorted. I'm actually going to change out that chip again. I have a feeling that we got a bad chip. Alright, here's the, once again, supposedly new chip. Let's pull this one off, and this one should be easier just because it's already low melt, or not low melt solder, but like lower temperature solder than the original. So all I should need to do is just pull it off, put the new one, squish it down, and that's it. Voila. Grab the new one, push it down. Okay. I'm gonna add some flux for when I go around to touch up all the edges. Okay. So I'm just putting solder right now because right now I have too little solder around the edges, and then I'm gonna go around with the hot air to help me fix it all up. So let's get you in focus. Oh yeah, this one's definitely better aligned, but I don't think that was the issue on the last one. Okay. Now you see how I'm trying to take away the solder with my iron? You're never going to take away solder with an iron that already has solder. You're never going to take away solder with an iron that already has solder. So that's why I got to keep cleaning my tip just to make sure that there's no like solder that I'm just kind of spreading around. Okay, yeah, that should be all of them. I'm gonna let it cool down, and while it's cooling down, just go around and check all of them. Check all the pins. Those look fine. Look good. Looks good. Looks good. Okay. Let's clean it off real quick, and then we'll re-plug in the charger and see if that makes any difference. Alright, it's still cooling down. It's pretty hot to the touch, but just kind of putting alcohol all over it should help cool it down. And now we'll plug in the charger. So it worked this way earlier, so let's see if that still works. And we get flashing lights. Oh, okay, 15. And this way we get, oh, there you go. 15 one way, 15 the other way. Let's see, why was it flashing earlier? Okay, it's fine. It's steady now. I also like to wiggle it around just to see if it's like loose, if it's cutting in and out. This seems pretty fine. Pretty fine this way, and then we gotta test it the other way. 15. Looks fine. Alright, so let's just quickly close it up, and that should be it. Alright. Oh, didn't even realize it. Half the view was obstructed. So now that I got most of the things in, I got the screen here and the backlight here. Those are pretty much the only ones that I really need. Plug in the battery. And let's plug in the charger and see if we see a battery logo. That battery logo for me is like an Apple logo, like a fan spin. Just kind of means, there you go, means it's turning on, and it's going to be perfectly fine. So now that I've seen that, I'm just going to go ahead and fully close it up with all the screws, and job should be done. And then for these two chips, I got trolled by one. This one was definitely bad, so I'm just going to throw both of them away. I'm not going to waste my time diagnosing and seeing which one was bad one and all that. Just throw it away. I don't need bad parts in my bins. Okay, so we'll plug these in, make sure that we're still getting the battery logo. Alright, there you go. Now I'm just going to let this charge up, and we'll come back in a couple minutes once it's turned on, just test touch, and then we're good to go. Okay, so going back to this, we're just going to plug this in, just make sure it's charging, and sure enough the whole thing is now turned on now, and it's charging at full speed, one way. The other way, no blinking, no cutting out or anything like that, and touch is working just fine. So, yeah, another happy customer.